So lovely to have you here today. And I know you are a person who has thought deeply about irrigation.
Yes.
Why is it that when did it start to become very important to you as a gardener?
Well, I started gardening in 74. And sure enough, come 75, the drought began. And so there were no drip systems in 75, but I hobbled together a system that used less water, using some off the shelf hardware from the greenhouse industry.
One of your books is called Greater Garden Yields with Drip Irrigation. Now, is there scientific evidence that actually suggests that by watering your trees and plants correctly, you can actually get better harvests?
I have dozens of studies done by universities in the book that show that starting out with drip, you can at least get 20% greater yields overall. There was a woman in India doing chilies, and she used 38% less water, but got 48% more chilies.
One of the things that I really was impressed with about you when I first learned about you is that you have written entire books on roots, because roots are the central part of the plant, the most important place, because they take in the water and nutrients. So, can you tell us a little bit about the role of roots and how they differ from tree to tree and from plant to plant?
Well, basically, roots grow much further from the trunk on a tree than most people realize. In a heavy soil, they might grow half again further than the drip line of the tree or the foliage. In a sandy soil, 3, 5, 6, 7 times wider than the drip line of the tree. So where are people putting their mulch and their water? Next to the trunk, and that's the worst place to put it as a tree matures. And it confines, I call it water bondage. If you just keep watering, fertilizing a foot away from the trunk, roots will stay there and they won't explore a large volume of soil to deal with periodic droughts and that sort of thing.
So, if an apple tree is on a dwarfing rootstock, I'm assuming that those roots won't stretch out far and wide. Is
Well,
that true?
they stretch out further than a lot of people think. Dwarfing rootstocks tend to have less roots beyond the foliage, but not a whole lot less, but enough to make a difference. So if you want to be on the safe side, you would water at the drip line of most trees, and then on dwarf trees, not go any further. On a standard rootstock, you could go further.
You're talking about watering at the edge of the canopy. Wouldn't we want to sprinkle the water, equally from the trunk out to the edge? Why would you focus on the edge of the canopy under the furthest, where the furthest branches are?
Well, because that's where the new roots are, and they have the root hairs, and only root hairs are absorbing the water and nutrients.
Before we go into drip irrigation, there is an option of soaker hoses. Do you have any strong feelings about soaker hoses, using them on fruit trees?
I hate soaker hoses. I don't think they should be sold. But basically, there's two things wrong with soaker hoses. One, you can't go very far away from the faucet till you have much less water coming out. And even with chlorinated city water, because the water sits in there between irrigations, it can develop algae bloom, and it starts to seal off all those micro pores on the tubing. So that in our area, soaker hose might be useless after 3, 5 years. Um, but the main thing is, like, if you take inline emitter tubing with an emitter every 12 inches built into it and roll it out from the faucet, you can go 275 feet and have exactly the same amount of water coming out at the end as the beginning. You can't do that with soaker hose, maybe 10 feet.
We got a little bit of time left. I want to talk about drip irrigation systems. How much money will I have to pay in? How do I set them up? I know this is just throwing a whole bunch at you now, but give us an idea of what we have to consider when you are setting up your own system.
Well, if you're going to build a system off of an existing hose bib or faucet, You start with some gizmos to convert hose thread from the faucet to iron pipe thread, but then the next thing you go to is a filter, because even in city water, you want to make sure the drip system doesn't clog due to stuff in the water. And then after that comes what's called a pressure regulator. Drip systems can't take city pressure. The household city water pressure is anywhere from 60 to 90 pounds per square inch. Drip systems like to be below 45. I like to keep them at 35 or 25 psi, pounds per square inch, so that the fittings don't blow apart and the emitters don't pop out. So you put a pressure regulator after the filter, and then you go to the drip system.
So you set up this system. I want to talk about the placement of the emitters, because a fruit tree has roots that go out in all different directions. So if you just sort of, place your drip system on one side of the fruit tree, then all the roots on the other side, won't they just die because they don't get water? What is your solution to that?
If you have a long row of tubing, I do it on each side of the trunk near the drip line. If it's a very big tree isolated from other trees, I do a spiral. So I start out with solid drip hose coming into within a couple feet of the trunk. Then I convert it to drip irrigation hose and make a spiral that goes out to and maybe beyond the drip line of the tree.